Alrighty here, ladies and gentlemen, we've got our continuation of triangle proofs. We've got corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent, and we would abbreviate this as CPCTC. Now, we've alluded to this, or foreshadowed this in some of the previous videos and also in class, that if I've got a pair of congruent triangles, let's say it's these two guys here, say I know that these two triangles are congruent by side angle side, right? We've got a pair of sides congruent, got a pair of angles congruent, and a pair of sides congruent. So these triangles are congruent by side angle side. Well, wouldn't it make sense that once I prove these triangles congruent that these angles would be congruent, right? And these angles would be congruent. And these sides would be congruent. Right? I mean, if the triangles are congruent, shouldn't every corresponding part be congruent? And that's what we're going to get into today. You're going to be able to prove triangles congruent, since we've already done that for a couple of days. And then we're going to go a little bit beyond that. We're going to prove other parts of the triangles are congruent. So it's just another step into what we've already known. We're just building upon what we already know. Okay? And we actually would do this in the transit activity, where we constructed some triangles and checked to see if another piece of information was the same as what the other group had gotten. Okay? So it'll be lovely. Now we're doing it in the mathy math proof form. Very formal indeed. It's like the tuxedo, black tie affair. That's kind of what we're doing here. Very formal. Okay. So this problem here, we've got a couple triangles. Why don't I just start labeling my congruent stuff? I've got angle C and angle F congruent. I've got angle B and angle E congruent. And then I've got AB congruent to DE. Okay, so this is meant to be a rather quick proof, just to get to the point of what we're trying to establish here, what we're trying to learn here, the new concept. Well, do I already have enough to get these triangles congruent? Yes, I do. I've got a pair of angles, another pair of angles, and then a side. So I can prove these triangles congruent by angle, angle, side. Oops, I don't want red. Keep it with blue. So triangle, now here's the thing, is we got to write our triangles correctly. This brings in like the first couple days, writing the congruent statement. So I'm going to just do A, B, C is congruent to, and now I got to be careful on how I write this one out. Lucky for me, these are drawn in the same orientation, so D, E, and F would be my triangle. Makes it nice and easy. Not always going to be that way. So I can see that E and B both have 2 tick marks, hence why they are lined up right here. And then we got C and F, so that's why those guys are lined up, right? They have 1 tick mark. And then I've also got AB, and I got DE, AB, DE, those guys are congruent. Okay, cool. So I've got my triangles congruent. Now, if my triangles are congruent, wouldn't it make sense that I could then prove this part? I could say these two sides are indeed congruent, because if my triangles are congruent, then I know all my corresponding parts are congruent. So I'm going to jump right to my proof here. And my reason is CPCTC. All right, let's make that P a little bit better. There we go. All right. So because my triangles were congruent, I can say that my corresponding parts are congruent. In this case, my corresponding sides. AC lines up. It's the outer 2, right? It's the outer 2 there. It lines up with D and F, okay? Which would be this guy here. So the outer 2 and the outer 2, that lines up their corresponding parts. Woo-woo! Awesome. All right, another one. And then we got one more. We're done. So I'm going to go ahead and label my given information, label that up. So I got angle 1 is congruent to angle 4, and angle 2 is congruent to angle 3. Okay, so I got 2 angles. I want to prove that AB is congruent to DC. So I'm going to keep that in mind, that I want to get these guys congruent. I don't have it yet, but I want to get there. So if I can prove a pair of triangles congruent, I can get those sides congruent, right? Well, I've only got 2 pairs of angles right now, so I need a side to prove these triangles congruent. And if you remember one of the wonderful, wonderful properties we learned, reflexive property, there we go, would get DB congruent to itself. So do I have enough information to prove 2 triangles congruent? Angle side angle is going to do that. Heck yes, I do. And once I get those triangles congruent, I can get those two sides in my proof statement taken care of. Okay, so let's start writing it up. And again, the triangle congruent statements will often be the difficult part. It's finding the triangles that you want, and then also writing those congruent statements can be kind of tricky. Well, I need to say that DB is congruent to itself. And that is by reflexive property. There we go. It's a little bit more like a B. Reflexive property. Okay. When I'm writing these proofs, I like to keep it in line, so I left a little gap right here since I used 2 lines over here. That way my 3's are still in line. Okay. So I got those. Now I can get my triangles congruent. So let's go with triangle ABD. It's congruent to, but what's that going to line up to? Well, it looks like B, the angle with B in that triangle, which is this guy right here, has 2 tick marks, right? And then the angle with D has 1. So I got to line that up with my next one, right? So B would correspond to D in the second triangle, and then D would correspond to B. Now it's a little bit weird, and then this guy's C. Let's see if that all checks out. All right. So A, B, D. So the angle with B in the first triangle lines up with B, D, C. So it lines up with D in the second triangle. All right, that's good. And then A, D, B in this top triangle with 1 tick mark should line up with C, B, D. So D should go with B. D goes with B. All right. Then A and C will end up being together, right? Okay, I like it. So we got our triangle congruent statements correct. I've got angle, side, angle. Do I have enough information to prove those 2 segments congruent? Yes, I do. And I'm going to use my new theorem, CPCTC. Corresponding parts of congruent triangles are indeed congruent. Dog. Ooh, that's a lovely proof. We're going to do one more, a little bit more to it. Keep expanding, keep on challenging ourselves, as that's very important, yes. All right. So, again, I like to start with jotting down my given info. So let's go with, let's see here. It says AE and EC are congruent. Angle A and angle C are congruent. And I want to prove these 2 angles are congruent. Okay? So I don't have them yet, but I want to get there. So again, we're thinking, some congruent triangles, right? Well, I've got an angle and a side, so I need something more, right? Well, I could get another side if it was AD and BC, because then I'd do side, angle, side, right? Side, angle, side. But I don't have anything to get AD and BC congruent. Okay, so let's see here. How about another angle? Well, I'm not going to be using these 2 because that's what I want to prove congruent. Is there another angle? Ooh, do you remember vertical angles? Heck yeah. So these guys are going to be congruent to each other. If you'd like, you can label them with 3 letters, or you can number them. Okay, so you're welcome to number these as 1 and 2 and use that in your proof. That's my preference because it's less writing. And time is money. You know, saving that time. Time is money. That ain't funny. Woo! All right. So I'm going to say angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. Vertical angles are congruent. Then I can get my triangles congruent. Now I got to be careful with my triangle congruency statement. So I'm going to do the first one. I'm just going to say triangle AED. It's congruent to triangle. So AED. Well, C is going to match up with A. E is going to match up with E in this case because that's where the vertical angles were. And then B and D will match up, so B. Perfect. And that was angle, side, angle. Right? Because my side is between the 2 angles, which is different than angle, angle, side. And to finish this guy off, we've got angle D is congruent to angle B. And our reason, CPCTC. Corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. Beautiful. Wonderful. I love it. That was so fun. Excellent.